Hey y'all, it's Alicia. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. We hope you feel comfortable and welcome aboard to our caring community. I'm on this morning because while I'm heading off my long trek home, which is actually going to involve a stop, which I'll explain actually probably at the end of this video, I wanted to film something for you that you could watch this morning because it's Friday. Happy Friday, y'all. Happy Friday. I know for some of you it's the end of a very long work week. I know that. So I'm hoping that this video is something you can watch and relax and learn a little bit about Africa and Morocco, and maybe that will give you a exciting start or a peaceful start or a happy start to your weekend. I want to start with one of my favorite places in Morocco. It's one of the first places we went to, and it is a city built into the Rif Mountains. And I mean literally built in, like in steps into the mountains. It's one of two spectacular sunsets I saw while in Morocco. And why do I love this city? The city is blue like the sky behind me. And they've painted it that way. This is a photograph of the city. It's a postcard photograph. And you can see that there's like a light blue behind. There's a richer, almost royal blue. And then there's this traditional turquoise blue, which by the way they make using indigo, which looks purple when you paint with it, and then in the sun or in a kiln, a heating oven, it turns this incredible blue. That's why I've never been able to duplicate this blue. Even if you go to a really fancy art store and you try to buy the blue that is there, you can't, because they're not using real indigo anymore. And the reason for that is it's really expensive. But they're still using it in Morocco because they're using medieval techniques for art, for dyeing of fabric, for dyeing of leather, for dyeing of all materials. So that is why we get this spectacular color everywhere. Well, not everywhere in Morocco, but lots in Morocco. But Chef Chouan is all blue, guys. This is a photograph that is being duplicated. This is what it looks like. And you can see that the person is wearing the jalaba. And I briefly explained to you guys when I got back, what's really cool about the jalaba is that it's worn by men and women equally. Sometimes modern women have shorter ones that they wear with leggings. That looks really cool. I actually got one while I was there. They're very comfortable. But the reason that this is worn is cultural. It's not religious in the way that we might assume if we saw this. And it's equal. Men and women both wear it. And I would argue, actually, I saw probably a few more men wearing than women. And it's a super practical garment. I don't know if it was designed for this reason, but I've told y'all, I got dirty loads, right? And the thing about a jalaba is that it keeps all that dirt off you so that when you come home, you can take off the jalaba if you want. Because a lot of people wear them in jeans or shorts or leggings underneath, and then your clothes are clean. Because you have to remember that some Moroccan households don't have sofas. They put rugs on the floor and these very big comfortable pillows. So those rugs have to be cleaned. And I can tell you, I saw a lot of rug cleaning, guys, and I mean old school rug cleaning. Like the beating out of the rugs is a daily thing where you take them outside and you beat them out with a stick. That is hard work. And then once to twice a week, you wash those rugs depending upon weather. And the washing involves beating, pouring water that you've gotten from a well. It is like, it looks to me like half a day's work. It is so much work. So to reduce some of the dirt that otherwise you'd be washing it every day, I think the jalaba helps a lot because it, that's something you can hang up in the front area when you walk in, and you have your clothes are clean for the most part underneath. Now I told you, this girl got really dirty on this trip, and I had to wash things out 3 times because my clothes were still the color of the sand. And you can see like the colors are really consistent. I'll show you another picture of Chef Chouan. So Chef Chouan is really beautiful. It glows blue. This is really what it looks like. This is an archway in the Medina, in the old part of the city where the market is. And this is what it looks like. There is not electricity lighting these alleyways at all. There are in the main square, but not through most of the passageways. So they're still, they are often lantern lit. And it's magical to walk through them. And I have another one of Chef Chouan that was done in a darker blue by the same artist, to sort of give you an idea as the sun's setting what it starts to look like. And this is the main square in Chef Chouan. And you're thinking like, what, is this an old photograph or old painting? No, this is what it looks like today, folks. This is a modern day image of Chef Chouan. There are those Rif Mountains. You can see the houses all built into the mountain. This is the main square and the main section of the market where everyone's shopping. This is one of the few markets in Morocco that a portion of it is in an open square. So if you have some claustrophobia, for instance, the market in Fez may have been difficult or challenging because I told you the alleyways that I'm going to show you are so narrow that you brush shoulders all the time with donkeys and mules and goods and other people. But here there's this big open square, so it makes it for more breathing space, and all above you is only sky, so it feels very freeing and large. It's a little bit of a different one. It does have a few small streets, but not small like the Medina in Marrakesh or the market in Fez. It's much wider, and still probably for some people a little cramped, but the main square is very spacious, and there are performers that come in the afternoon, all sorts of performers. Morocco has a tradition of storytelling where at night, after you would work and you'd eat, you'd go to the main square and there'd be some people there teaching things like physics. I know it's crazy, but it's true. We learned this on our tour, actually. They would teach physics. Another person would be telling folk tales. Another person would be playing music. And how they would come to relax is they would come to this main square of where they live, and people would sit and tell stories all night, and people would sit and listen. I have to tell you, it's still a tradition upheld today in every Medina market. So in Marrakesh, there were probably 100 storytellers, snake charmers, people teaching things, musicians. It was like going to like the most amazing, huge show in a very crowded place. Because the marketplace in Marrakesh gets packed because it's overrun with tourists. It's overrun with tourists within Morocco, plus tourists from all over the world. But it was amazing to see storytelling so alive in a country. And in the smaller Medinas, like in small cities, like Afroud or Afroud doesn't really have a wall city the same way. But there's Safrou. There's a good example. Safrou, which is just outside of Fez, in their section of the Medina, which is much smaller, it's still alive and well. And you can see all these stories being told and passed down from one generation to the next. So they don't watch a lot of TV, folks. They're a satellite look. People in Morocco, even living in those 13th and 14th century houses, which is pretty common in Morocco. We would drive by and there'd be like 100 houses, and I know from the architecture they were built in the 13th century. So we're talking about like 1250, right? And I'd say to like, if we had a guide with us that day, or I would ask somebody, like, am I right? And they'd say, yeah, those are 13th century houses. And they're still standing. They're still being used by families. But a lot of them, depending upon where they are, some have electricity, some don't. The ones with electricity all have satellite dishes. So they have some internet. I told you the internet there is super, super irregular. And I understand that's very common in a country where you have a very wealthy class and you have a lot of people living below the poverty line and very little middle class. I understand that's a common problem because the internet is usually the internet's controlled, so there's only so much that's emitted to the public. And so that could explain it. I don't know that's the explanation I was given. I have not done research. I'm just sharing what I was told. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right story. But there are satellite dishes on all these houses, so it's really interesting to see a 13th century house with a satellite dish and know that there's like internet inside and TV. But I also I had the good fortune to go, one of our drivers took us to his family's house for a meal for lunch, which was really thoughtful of him, and it was really good cooking. His mom cooked. And we met his dad and his brother and his sister, and they keep a traditional Moroccan home, so there are rugs on the floor and big fluffy pillows in the greeting room. That's the room where you officially greet visitors. They always keep a room just for visitors. I'm not kidding. Just for visitors. They never use it unless there is an honored guest. So it's laid with their best carpets and their best pillows. And we had a little table, and on that table she brought cake and an amazing meal of like couscous and chicken. They ate a lot of chicken, and we're going to talk about why. And she made like these amazing vegetables and salad. And a Moroccan meal is a complicated meal. It comes with a salad that is often about 6 different cut of vegetables, or cooked vegetable salads like carrot salad and potato salad, all different salads. And then in the middle is cooked rice that's been flavored with herbs and spices, and they eat the rice cold like a rice salad. It's the only time I saw rice being eaten on a regular basis in Morocco, is in the salad. And then after salad, you have your main course, which we had couscous with chicken and vegetables. It was amazing. And then there was dessert, which is a huge platter of fruit, nuts, chocolates, and cake. So that's a Moroccan lunch. As you can tell, it's a huge meal. Culturally, they believe that breakfast and lunch are the 2 biggest and most important meals of the day. So breakfast and lunch in Morocco is enormous. and then they eat a snack around 4 o'clock. Now, a snack for them is a quarter of roast chicken, or a slice of pizza, or a Moroccan crepe um, filled with like cheese for adults, and kids like it filled with like a kind of like Nutella spread, or just sugar. That's a snack at 4 o'clock, and then they eat a lighter dinner. It's still quite elaborate. It's just not as elaborate as lunch. And breakfast, guys, wow! Breakfast is 2 types of homemade crepes, eggs, cheese, bread, fruit. I can keep going. I'm not kidding. Salad. It's a big breakfast. So the first 2 meals are the most important for them, and they're enormous by our standards, enormous and complicated, and they take an hour to eat. So that's a Moroccan meal. I gotta watch the time. We're already at 10 minutes. I have so much to share with you. So I told you that this was one of my favorite postcards that I got, because this is a moment I witnessed over and over again, especially once we got out of like Marrakesh or Fez or the big cities. You saw a lot of women and children, and men actually, but more women and children, washing laundry in exactly this way, where they carried down these enormous loads of laundry, or 2, using the same thing sometimes that a mule uses, which is this leather kind of saddle piece, and then 2 giant baskets. I saw women carrying laundry that way. I'm not kidding. I was like, isn't your back going to break? And they also use a giant scarf, and they fill that with laundry also to carry it down. But once they got down to the river, they would first rinse the clothes, put soap on the clothes, then beat the clothes, just like these girls, with sticks. So they don't use a washboard, they beat them with sticks, boom, 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 just like a carpet, which I'm going to tell you about carpet cleaning. And then they would rinse and rinse and rinse, and then lay them flat out on rocks to dry. This is laundry. I told you, I have no reason to complain about my hand washing. I am excited to have my washing machine back at home. But this is really laundry in a lot of Morocco. And I realized how spoiled I am when I watched this over and over again. Because here I am complaining like, oh, I have to do 7 loads of hand washing. Yeah, well, I didn't have to carry it to a river, beat it all out, bring it all back up. I wouldn't be able to do it with my disease. I was astounded at these women and these kids who are able to do it. And I just told you, carpet cleaning, that's no small feat there. Because you sit on the carpets, and because that means your hands, your body is on them, they are dusted out every day. And that involves taking your huge carpets, putting them out over a line, and beating them with sticks. And I've watched people do it. It takes over an hour to do 1 carpet. So imagine if you have 5 to do, or it's intense. And if you're washing a carpet, it's even more complicated, because you have to beat it out, then you have to get water from the well, you have to suds it up and soap it up, then you have to rinse it out, and then it has to dry in the sun, and you have to lay it flat. So housework there is a whole day affair. It's no wonder these women are up early and working until sundown, and then they're exhausted and go to bed. Because Moroccans, outside again of Casablanca and Fez, cities shut down like an hour after sunset. And I think it's because they're exhausted. Think about it. If you were doing that all day, wouldn't you be exhausted? And on top of that, they're cooking. They're lighting fires to cook food. It's a hard day of labor. And I realized, wow, am I ever spoiled? Like, incredibly spoiled. I told you a bit about what it was like to go through the marketplaces of Morocco. They're really famous, guys, but I want to show you how narrow. Do you see that there's like, I'm trying to see in this image. Yeah, you can see it. There's like less than a foot between this passerby and the items for sale on either side. Here's the thing. This is a rare moment in a Medina or an inside city marketplace, old city marketplace. Most of the time, there's like 100 people and 4 mules, and goods being brought back and forth by wheelbarrow also. So it's never this calm. Ever. If it was this calm, I could have made you a video. It's never this calm. So I will tell you, see that narrow passageway? That's where donkeys and mules come by you. You literally brush shoulders with donkeys on a regular basis. I can't tell you how many times a donkey and I banged into each other. So many times on this trip. More than 10 for sure. So it's never this calm. It's usually filled with people doing their grocery shopping, because they also sell food in the market, and fruit, and dried goods. They sell clothes that they need to buy, towels, also the sort of lanterns and trays and cups. It is magical. As I told you, a huge portion of what they sell deep in the market is still handmade. Now, in the big cities like Marrakesh, the first half of the market is AliExpress garbage. And you sort of have to figure that out. but the handmade stuff is still available there. In Fez, there's a few AliExpress kind of vendors, or more than a few, because the Fez market had like 1,000 streets, so more than a few. But there was tons of handmade stuff in Fez. In Marrakesh, it's one small quarter where you can go see it. Marrakesh is overrun with tourists. It is overrun with tourists. Most people who visit Morocco hate Marrakesh because they find it like it's like thousands and thousands of tourists and tour groups. I loved Marrakesh because the center square, which I'll tell you about and why I love it, about the storytelling and the gathering, and about what it's like to be in Marrakesh. I loved it. But you do have to know it is mostly tourists and people who have come from other parts of the country to get a job, and they're working in the service industry for tourism. Like all major cities, right? They're in the world, they've been taken over by tourism. So it's a small world today. Lots of people are traveling, I guess. So, wow, that was a giant bee. This is what a market looks like. It's that cramped. And I think if you have claustrophobia, especially in Fez, where it's super tight and the alleyways are really narrow and then there's like a donkey pushing past you, it can feel a bit intense. But there's no question that you have been transported in time. Because what we witnessed there, I mean, everything is fresh from farms in other areas, like everything. So, you know, we talk about farm to the table in North America, or fresh from the farm. Okay, everything here is still grown. It's an agricultural country. Its primary export is agriculture. So it grows so many things. The bananas were amazing there. Not just, I love Moroccan clementines that come out in North America in February. Oh, I saw the groves. They're magnificent. They produce salt. They have huge salt mines. They're one of the biggest producers of salt. They produce all sorts of things. They are still growing. Farming is the biggest industry, and it's so beautiful. Olive oil, olive trees, you know, it's spectacular, and it's respected there in a huge way, in a way that I think sometimes we forget in America to respect our farmers. Their farming is a very respected traditional way of life, and it's also a really revered occupation. And that's because it's still its primary export. And that's amazing. So every market has fresh everything. Now, I'm going to give you a little warning. I'm an animal lover, which may seem in contradiction with the fact that I eat meat, but it's not. And I can explain to you why I eat meat, and we could have that whole dialogue. But if you have issues with meat eating, you may want to fast forward through the next minute or two, because I'm going to share that one of the things that was amazing about Morocco is that when you go to buy a chicken, it's alive. You pick your own chicken. And you can't get away from the idea that you are killing an animal. And I think that's a good thing. And I also think what was amazing is I didn't realize this until this trip. But because I have bought my chickens for so long from the supermarket, I don't know a healthy chicken from an unhealthy chicken. I don't know if you guys do. But I learned there. They taught me. Several people taught me. Women taught me. Vendors taught me how to examine a chicken, how to check to make sure it's okay. But their chickens roam free. Like, they have these enormous outdoor pens that are all open to the air, and the chickens wander around, and you go and pick your chicken. Several times where I went for dinner, they were like, do you want to pick your chicken? And they were serious. And then they picked the chicken if I didn't want to. But what I think is good is that you're very aware of what you're doing. Sometimes I think when I go to the supermarket and I buy meat, it's really easy to desensitize myself to the fact that that was a living animal. You cannot run from that in Morocco. Whether you're eating a goat or you're eating a chicken, they're happy to show you the actual animal. And it's difficult at first. So I walked this one market, and it was in the butcher section, and I love to cook, as you guys know. And so I was really fascinated by it until I hit this one row where all it was teeth. And I'm not kidding. Teeth all over the ground. It was a carpet of teeth. And I don't know, something in me just sort of said, if you stay here another minute, you'll stop eating meat. Because that was just such a harsh reality for me. I was like starting to count the animals. How many animals were killed today? And that's when I had a real moment. But I want to remind you about something about Morocco. Not only are the animals roaming everywhere and free, excuse me, they eat every part of that animal. And they use every part of that animal. Whether it's a goat, whether it's a horse, whether it's a camel, whether it's a chicken, they use it all. They use chicken feathers for things. They use hides. They take all the hide, and they eat the head. and the feet. They don't waste a thing. And my husband, who shared a meal with someone in Fez, he ate the private parts of a sheep and cow. They don't waste a thing, folks. Not one piece of that animal is wasted. So sometimes people who are activists about meat and meat consumption in North America, one of their biggest complaints is that how much it's hard on the environment and also how much waste there is. In Morocco, there is not a lot of waste. There's almost none. And I had to force myself to watch it happen because I wanted to see, is there really that little waste here? Oh yes, folks, they don't waste almost anything. They use it all. And some of you might say, I don't know if I can wrap my head around eating a camel head. You know, that might be hard for me. And I get it. The first time I saw it, I was like, But then I think to myself, well, you know what? I've eaten feet. And also, I want to know that every animal that is being slaughtered for my consumption, I like knowing that every piece is going to be eaten. It's not going to be wasted. And we're not just, if you're a meat eater and you have some consciousness about this, you don't want to take one part of an animal and waste the rest. It is bad for the environment. It is bad for the animal. So in Morocco, they use every single inch. Even the feathers of the chicken are used. So what's amazing about that, they make paintbrushes out of the quills. They do all sorts of things that are super innovative. But every part is used. There is no waste. And everyone there is very keenly aware that they are eating an animal and slaughtering an animal for consumption. So they don't eat meat every day. And they do have a sort of special relationship with animals. And they have a rule that they have to slaughter them ethically and swiftly and try not to cause any pain. And they take all this very seriously. So I think as a meat eater, that was really important to know. And I learned a lesson about myself. I had to face up to my meat eating. I had to learn how to pick a chicken. And I thought, if you can't slaughter it, you shouldn't eat it. So I had to learn how to do it, folks. I don't think I'll do it on a regular basis. It was hard on this girl's soul. But I do think it was important I did it. Because if I can't go pick that chicken, I have no business eating it. It's too easy for me in the supermarket to pretend that wasn't a chicken. Now, my mother always says, well, she doesn't love chickens that much. You know, she had an aunt who had a lot of chickens when she was a kid, and she spent summers there, and she's like, they can be annoying, Alicia. But I bet you if we were talking about a cow, my mom would have a different reaction, because she also loves animals. I think we get too desensitized, and it's important to know where your food comes from. That's just my thought. Here's another picture of a market. This is really common. This is the woodworking section where they're making like cooking spoons and honey dips, because honey there they harvest all that. They do not have a bee problem. Do you know that in the mosques they've built on each corner a secret hive for bees, and then they harvest that honey. They told me the whole process, and then they showed it to me in different places. It was amazing. They do not have our bee problem. They are constantly helping hives regenerate, and so it's a really important thing for them in Morocco because they eat honey with almost every meal, and certainly with tea. Certainly with tea. Sorry, I'm having a sip of my coffee. We are already at 23 minutes, so I may have to do a part 2, or I'm just going to quickly go through and show you some of these things. So Morocco is famous for its doorways, and it's beautiful, ornate. It's a combination of plaster, wood, sometimes marble, and tile. And they do follow the sort of traditional geometric kind of patterns in tile, because of the Quran says that you're not supposed to create images of God, and I think of women too. I'm not sure about the women's, but these are some of the famous doorways of Morocco. But the truth is, folks, you see this everywhere. This is partially why the country is so beautiful. Imagine if most of the doorways you were looking at were painted these glorious colors, had these plaster pieces above them and all this ornate wood, and everything is like hand done. It's done with a hand chisel. Today they do have molds for construction to create these kinds of patterns, but a lot of people still prefer the hand chisel, so it's still hand done a lot of the time. But literally, this is how amazing the doorways often look. Especially of mosques, they're phenomenal. I want to show you the Bahia Palace and tell you the quick story of it, but I think I'm going to have to do that in a separate video. So instead, this is the tannery. Again, if you're sensitive about animals, I'm not telling you anything scary, but this is where they tan all the leather that Morocco is famous for. And it is done in the medieval fashion from the 14th century. They have not changed this process. And back here, how they cure the hides is they mix pigeon urine. Can you imagine? They collect buckets of pigeon urine. Don't ask. And you don't want to know how. I was like, wow, I saw it. Yeah. Pigeon urine and limestone, which is a natural resource in Morocco. And then after it's cured, it gets hung up around these building balconies to dry in the sun or laid flat over on a flat surface.
It's 9 o'clock.
Hello, Arman. And then these are the vats of color that they put the hide in to dye it. And to do that, like yellow is made with saffron, mint is used to make green. The blue and purple are actually indigo. They still use indigo, which is really expensive. That's also if they get that bright blue, as I was telling you, but most countries don't use indigo anymore because it's still expensive. But they do. So these are all the colored vats. So after they cure the hides, men go and stand in these wells of color. So they're all different color, their skin. And they old-fashioned dunk the hides. And then once they're pretty solid color, because, you know, Moroccan leather has lots of imperfections because it's all hand done. So of course it has imperfections. That's where the beauty is. After they've got it fairly dyed, they take it out and they lay it flat and it dries in the sun. I saw this over and over again. It was remarkable. And as a crafter, I learned a lot about not just how to dye leather, how to use leather, but also even how to make books with leather. Well, folks, that is part 1 of my Tales from Morocco. I will try to do a second video where I talk a little bit about the Bahia Palace and the king's mistresses and the harem, which is a great story from Morocco. And I'll tell you a bit more about the desert, too. All right, y'all, I'll try to make that video before I head off to the airport. I hope whatever you do this Friday, it gives you loads of happiness. Bye for now.